G-Sauce, Gavin here. The other day I posted a video of my Kashtira deck profile, and I was saying that there were a couple things I wanted to talk about. So today I'm going to post a video with some tips and tricks and some combos on how I like to play this deck. So let's start out with the first combo. This is the most broken hand you can really have in the deck. It's both of the power cards. Now, there's a couple ways to play this hand, but I'm going to start up with the combo, and then I'm going to go around with test hands and sequencing. So, special unicorn, effect, and we're going to grab Birth. Now, Birth is cool because it lets you normal summon Fenrir, even though it's a level 7. So now you can special summon Fenrir, and then Fenrir effect, and we're going to grab an extender with Scare Cash. Now here, we're going to go into a Mecha Phantom Beast, and we're going to use the effect. It is very important that you detach the Fenrir. So I'm going to put it like this to know that it's detached. And it gives us 2 tokens. Now with these tokens, you're going to turn one into Link Spider, and we're going to use the other one and go into another Link Spider. Now it's very important that both of these are Cybers. So we're going to throw those in the grave, and we are going to make G Golem Crystal Heart. Now, G Golem Crystal Heart, for the OG Mathmech players, they know that this brings back an Earth Cybers monster. So, Link Spider is an Earth Cybers monster. So we're going to bring back Link Spider. And we're going to use these two as 2 Cybers monsters with different attributes to go into Heat Soul. Now we're going to use that to draw 1 card. We're going to pay Grand. And here we have like infinite things we can do. Now, one thing we can do is that if they didn't nib us already, we can insulate nib by going these 2 into Apo. Or we can do something a little fancier. If you don't care about a nib, if you're just putting them on Habit, because they might have nibbed you already before this, you can use Birth. Actually, you use Scare Cash, banish Fenrir, special it. Then you use Birth, special back Fenrir. And you can turn these 2 into either an SP or an IP Masquerena. Now, IP Masquerena is a little bit more flexible. What this means is that you can get the draw with this during the next draw phase, and you can use IP to turn these 2 into either Apo or SP. But it's very important that you leave Fenrir on field, just so that you can always have spot removal. And you can either get 2 banishes and the negates, and a 2-mat Apo with Fenrir is kind of broken, especially under a 2-card combo. And if they activate any spells, you can kind of like rip their graveyard. So yeah, this is about like the standard board. And now that we know the combo, let's get into some tips and tricks. Okay, now since I showed you the 1-card combo, the 2-card combo, let me show you the 1-card combo with just Fenrir. So you're going to special Fenrir, and you're going to use effect. And you are going to grab Riseheart. After this, you are going to normal summon Riseheart. It's very important that you normal summon it so you're not XYZ locked. And you're going to use Riseheart effect. And you are going to banish, right here it doesn't really matter, but let's just banish Ogre. You can banish Unicorn in case you have Birth. And then here, you are going to go into Mecha Phantom Beast. And you're going to use Dracossack effect. You're going to detach Fenrir, and you're going to make 2 tokens. You're going to turn 1 into Link Spider, and again the other one into Link Spider. This is going to be just like the last combo. You're going to turn these 2 into G Golem. You're going to use G Golem into this. And you're going to turn these 2 into Heat Soul. So this is a 1-card Heat Soul combo. So I will suggest that this one is not as good because you do not have access to Birth. But you still have 4, now 5 cards in hand because you're going to be using Heat Soul effect. And you can turn these 2 into SP. You can turn these 2 into Apo. You still have just as much access as you did before. The big issue is that you don't have follow-up. So depending on your hand, it's very hand dependent, but this is still just as good as the other one. I'd just say watch out, because not having access to Birth does take you off from the other parts that are very good in this play. All right, tip number 1. I see a lot of people do this. Let's say you have 2 rank 7s. I immediately see people go into their extra deck and try to make an XZ. If you have these two, don't do that. Because these two are already interruptions by themselves. You can either look at their extra deck, or you can just banish a monster or a face-up card. The reason why you don't really want to just turn this into Shang is because Shang doesn't do anything by itself. Shang can lock zones, but like unless you're playing against pendulums, there's no reason to do that. If anything, you're just wasting 2 interruptions to go into a mid interruption and special summon one from deck. But the one you're going to special summon from deck is probably going to be these two anyway. Especially if you have access to Fenrir, there's no reason to do this. The only time I think it's ever correct to go into Shang, especially with the last combo, we had access to Shang. But the reason why we didn't is because we didn't have access to Pressure Planet. Pressure Planet is a really good card because it turns Shang into a pop disruption at any point. So using a card like this with this is fine. But if you don't have Reiso's face up, please do not make Shang unless you're playing against a deck like Super Heavy Samurai. But I promise you, that's never going to happen. All right, another tip I'd like to show you guys is Riseheart is a kind of hard card to explain. So I remember back in Kashtira format, people were always confused when this card locks you. So for this example, what we're gonna do is we're gonna special summon Unicorn. We're gonna activate the effect and we're gonna grab Birth. Now, we are going to normal summon Riseheart, because if you activate the effect for it to special summon from hand, you are locked. However, if you use the effect to make it a 7, you are fine. And the reason why this is important is because when you have access to a card like Birth, you can always extend and keep grabbing material. Like you can banish a card off of Riseheart, like Fenrir, and then use this to get it. Now, the really cool thing is that then here, you can just use this as follow-up. So then you can do full Auroradon combo, not Auroradon, sorry, Dracosac combo. But that's very important to know, because now since you're using Link monsters, you have to be able to know when this locks you or not. Because you don't want to be caught in a game and someone's like, hey, you're XZ locked. No, you're not. You normal summon this card. This card is fantastic. This is why this card is at 3 now in most lists. And that is something you definitely need to know for the future. The next thing I kind of want to talk about, tip, or just most of the discussion, is Nibiru. Can you play Nibiru in this deck? Well, the short answer is yes. It's been in YCS winning deck lists. It's been in YCS topping deck lists. But why? So how I like to look at it is going second, right? Actually, no, let's talk about going first. Going first, you can set up your full combo. And let's say you're able to end on with your full combo a card like Birth. And you get the Birth. Now what? Okay, when you nib, you had access to Birth. You nibbed them. And let's say you had other hand traps or other things you had to go through. This is always your last line of defense, right? Well, next turn, Birth in your follow-up, grab it back. Or you have Birth in your hand, bring it back. You're always ending on follow-up. If you're ending on follow-up, this isn't going to hurt you. Now, let's say you're going second, right? Well, in the current list that I posted the other day, I'm on about 15 hand traps. The odds of you opening up Nib in another hand trap are very large. But also, so is opening up Nib with a way to still play. Because let's say you have another redundant hand trap. Well, you nib them. You normal summon Ash. You can go into a card like Donner Dagger for Hire. Donner Dagger for Hire is the old tech where what you do is you can pop itself and you can pop a monster in their side of the field. And you can special out Fenrir. Well, let's say, what's other options we can do here? Well, you can just special summon their Nibiru token and attack position, run into it, special summon your Fenrir. If it's big enough. Other things you can do. You can also just have another extender. Your hand could just be straight gas. You could hit them with, let's say this isn't here. Let's say you special summon out Nibiru, and then you normal summon out Riseheart. And let's just say you just banish a card, right? You banish a Fenrir. Well, you Birth, bring back Fenrir. The moral of the story here is that when we're looking at it, Nib isn't really the problem here. Nib can turn you off. I just played in a case event today, and it did kind of keep me off in a game, but that was like one game out of like 20 plus I played today. In testing, it doesn't really come up that much. What you can do is instead of just saying, well, I lost Nibiru once, you can look at all the games you've won because of Nibiru. Nibiru is a fantastic card, and it's also a card that you can play in your deck. that you could also build around. The next thing I kind of want to talk about, tip, or just most of the discussion is Nibiru. Can you play Nibiru in this deck? Well, the short answer is yes. It's been in YCS winning deck lists. It's been in YCS topping deck lists. But why? So how I like to look at it is going second, right? Actually, no, let's talk about going first. Going first, you can set up your full combo. And let's say you're able to end on with your full combo a card like Birth. And you get the Birth. Now what? Okay, when you nib, you had access to Birth. You nibbed them. And let's say you had other hand traps or other things you had to go through. This is always your last line of defense, right? Well, next turn, Birth in your follow-up, grab it back. Or you have Birth in your hand, bring it back. You're always ending on follow-up. If you're ending on follow-up, this isn't going to hurt you. Now, let's say you're going second, right? Well, in the current list that I posted the other day, I'm on about 15 hand traps. The odds of you opening up Nib in another hand trap are very large. But also, so is opening up Nib with a way to still play. Because let's say you have another redundant hand trap. Well, you nib them. You normal summon Ash. You can go into a card like Donner Dagger for Hire. Donner Dagger for Hire is the old tech where what you do is you can pop itself and you can pop a monster in their side of the field. And you can special out Fenrir. Well, let's say, what's other options we can do here? Well, you can just special summon their Nibiru token and attack position, run into it, special summon your Fenrir. It's big enough. Other things you can do. You can also just have another extender. Your hand could just be straight gas. You could hit them with, let's say this isn't here. Let's say you special summon out Nibiru, and then you normal summon out Riseheart. And let's just say you just banish a card, right? You banish a Fenrir. Well, you Birth, bring back Fenrir. The moral of the story here is that when we're looking at it, Nib isn't really the problem here. Nib can turn you off. I just played in a case event today, and it did kind of keep me off in a game. But that was like one game out of like 20 plus I played today. In testing, it doesn't really come up that much. What you can do is instead of just saying, well, I lost in Nibiru once, you can look at all the games you've won because of Nibiru. Nibiru is a fantastic card, and it's also a card that you can play in your deck. That you could also build around. Now, the next tip is sequencing. So if you have these two cards, how do we sequence it? Of course, Combo Brain tells us the special unicorn effect. We're going to grab Birth. Let me see if I can yoink out a Birth here real quick. Or Theosis, and gets us into combo, right? But what happens if this gets impermed and these are the only two cards in our hand? Is it correct to special unicorn? No. So if you special unicorn and you have Fenrir, this card loses to Ash, this card loses to Imperm, this card loses to Valor. Oh, and Mourner. If you special Fenrir, they can Mourner you, they can Imperm you, they can Ash you, they can do everything to Unicorn, but this is a better disruption. This is always going to be a disruption on your opponent's turn, and then if they out this, cool, they wasted it. Let's say they don't kill you. The special Unicorn, they already wasted their hand traps on Fenrir. You can now grab Birth and bring this back. So if you're trying to be more aggressive and you're being less combo brain, the better one for one is Fenrir. Fenrir has to bait two hand traps at the least. It at least gets rid of two cards because let's say they hand trap it. Cool, now they're going on to their turn. And then they start playing and now you can rip something else. The extra deck rip is not as important. And just make sure that you don't die. Where this has a higher reward, right? Where you special this to do this and then you can full combo. But it's not always correct to combo in this deck. The issue with this deck, which kind of makes it a little harder than people think it is that you actually have to sequence your plays in a way to make sure you don't always lose. You have to keep yourself insulated. So sometimes it's just correct to end on this board because it plays around Nib, plays around more hand traps. And if you're reading Nib, which you have to read Nib now, it's just smarter to end like this. So that's at least how I would sequence this. Now, let's say for the sake of argument, this is your hand and the card that is added is Riseheart. How would we want to do this? Well, there's a couple things we can do here. We can activate Riseheart, and then we can Riseheart grab another name. Let's say it's Riseheart, but then here's the issue. We're Drolled. And the only thing that we can do under Droll now is kind of Fenrir pass, right? Or we can special Fenrir, go into Riseheart, and then make an SP and do a little bit of the board we were doing before. We can still set up the whole board from before. We just don't get the draws. However, there is a better way to play around this. How? Okay, well, what we're gonna do here is that if we're reading Droll, if Droll is the one disruption that we're scared of, right? I believe it is always better to play around Droll by specialing Unicorn using effect. Because then if they think that you have it, you grab Birth, they Droll you. Cool. Birth, special Fenrir. And now you have 2 disruptions. And you can do the full combo too, where you can special back the Fenrir after you do it. This plays around Droll completely. Leading Riseheart is also very weird, because what Riseheart does is it's a check card. Riseheart can check for Ash and Droll at once. The issue though with this hand is that you kind of lose if you get Drolled on this. Like you can make a little bit of a combo, but you have no follow-up. Where if you want the follow-up and a combo, you lead Unicorn. That's at least how I would play through this. Of course, we can do what we were talking about beforehand, where we special Fenrir. This plays around the most, of course, where you can try to add, and then if not, you can Riseheart, grab Riseheart, and then get Droll. So I think that is another way to try to do it, but then you don't have the follow-up, where if you special Unicorn, this gets hit, you can do the exact same thing with Riseheart, and then you can Riseheart, turn these 2 into the full combo. So either way, the correct option is just not to lead Riseheart there, unless like the card that you're trying to bait is specifically Ash, but then the hard punish is a lot harder with a card like Droll. So now since we know what to do when we open up these 2 cards, we now need to know what we do when we open up this. So Shifter is very, very good in this deck. This is, in my opinion, the best deck to play Shifter. However, the main issue that we kind of come into is that how are we going to combo if we're under Shifter? The answer is, please do not. And I'll show you what I mean here, right? So let's just say we're going combo brain. We special Unicorn, we activate the effect to grab Birth, right? And what we can do is that we can grab Birth, activate Birth, normal summon Fenrir effect. Now, there's a couple things here. One, you can play around Droll by activating Shifter here, just so that they can't Shifter you. So on activation Unicorn, you see they don't have anything, you then Shifter. That's fine. But just for like sake of argument here, let's just say there's no Droll. And there's a couple things you can do. Because it also doesn't really matter. Because if you have Shifter, there is no reason to hit them with the Auroradon combo. Or not the Auroradon, I'm so sorry, I've been saying that, Dracosack. Because Dracosack requires you to go into the G-Golem, right? But G-Golem can't resurrect because there's nothing to grab from your graveyard. It's all banished. So then this puts us in a pretty precarious spot. What you can do is you can go into SP. So let's say you can go into SP there, which is fine. But there's other things you can do too, like not playing into Nib. And by doing that, you can just special summon these 2. I would say, what's Fenrir? And Fenrir, you can go grab some follow-up. Let's grab the Riseheart. So then here, you can pass here, right? And the reason why you can pass here is because you have Birth, you have 2 interruptions, and on their turn, you can Shifter. So sometimes what you can do is that you can Shifter them on their turn to make them think that they don't have it. However, you do run into some issues there where one, you kind of play into Thrust, but I don't see a lot of people playing Thrust net right now. Another issue you can have is that if they have Called By, they can just Called By Shifter. So sometimes it's just safer to Shifter on your turn, but that's always an option you have. So don't always try to combo brain with this deck. This is also just enough, because then if they out these, cool. Birth effect, right? You can then birth back the Fenrir, or you can birth back the Unicorn, whichever one you want, and you can just go full combo, right? You have enough. You can always play through your own Shifter, and don't really expect the Snake Eyes deck, or really any other deck, to just kind of kill you under it, especially if you just play around talents. Let's say you do activate Shifter on your turn, right? Then you're waiting. The most they can really do is try to link climb a little bit, but if they don't have talents, they lose, right? Because you can just Fenrir banish their field spell. Just wait, wait, wait. They can go into Princess, I guess, but what's Princess gonna grab back? You know, they can't really throw it anywhere. They can Princess beat over this. Cool, next turn, bring this back, Fenrir, banish it. They can SP. There's just so much that you have advantage with that they don't. So that's what I would prefer to do here. You don't always have to combo. I think holding here is usually the best thing to do. Now, let's say you open up Unicorn with no other cards, but you do have hand traps. But the issue is that you're bricking on hand traps, right? Now, the issue is that you're playing 15 hand traps. Why are you playing 15 hand traps, right? Like, you're gonna draw doubles, you're going to lose. Well, here's the issue that we have. We have double Ash Blossom, but we have Kashtira Unicorn, which is a 7. So that means that we can summon out Unicorn, Unicorn effect, and this gives us 2 lines. Here, we can either grab Birth, or if you're feeling really good, you can grab Theosis. Now, let's think here, right? We have 2 things. Which one plays around what? Now, if they have Imperm, you're not getting here regardless, right? So let's put these back like this. However, if they have Droll, what are you gonna do, right? So if they Droll us, we grab Birth. Well, crazy, we can just normal the Ash Blossom, Synchro, into Baron. So now you have Baron plus Ash, then you can Birth back the Unicorn. So you have an extra deck rip, you have a Ash Blossom, you can rip from their graveyard, and you have a Baron. That's pretty good. And of course, off of this, you're also gonna have 3 more cards in your hand because you start with 5. So that means that you could have just more hand traps. Or, let's look at the line like this, right? Let's say instead of grabbing Birth, you grab Theosis. So you special Unicorn, grab Theosis, Theosis effect. Oh, they ash you there. You pass. Cool. You can't do much. Like, this just limits you more on your follow-up. This is why most of the time you actually want to go for Birth over Theosis. Mostly for the fact that, like, if you get, like, Ash on Theosis here, sure, you can kind of look to the extra deck, but then what else are you really doing? Like, you don't have follow-up. You don't have anything else you can really do if your hand is a brick. You want to make sure that you can just go here, bring this back, and sure, this is your board, right? This isn't the best board, but what you also have to think is you have 3 other cards in your hand. Where if you were passing on Unicorn in a Dream, sure, you have like 4 hand traps. Yeah, 4 hand traps at that point, or like 4 dead cards. But this means that you can always bring this back. So you're prioritizing the follow-up, and you have more disruption, which is very, 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 very good. The one thing that this does lose to is that this actually loses a super poly. If your local is a super poly heavy, or if you're in a super poly heavy format, do not put these 2 wins on board. If you have another extender, of course, you can try to get out of this a little bit more. Let's say you do have the Theosis. So let's replace this with Theosis. This is fine, because you can Theosis, target that, someone like Fenrir. But if you don't, and these are all just kind of dead cards, let's do it like this. This, I believe, is the optimal end board. This is where Barone really shines, and we're playing the level 3 tuners are very, very good. This is why we play Bell in the Sign. This is why we play Ash. This is why we play Mourner. Not only are they just good hand traps, but if you brick on them, you can go into this. And sometimes it's just better to do that. And then if you have the extender, you can insulate your lines. It's very, very good. I think something heavily slept on this deck. Of course, it's kind of general knowledge in the deck, but I think showing the sequencing or showing the ideas and the argument of why we do this is very important. And thus concludes my little Kashtira, basically primer. I've loved this deck. I've been playing it for the past couple weeks, and I just kind of wanted to share everything that I've learned. If you guys would like to see more content like this, please let me know in the description down below. I'd love to make more. If there was any more like little Kashtira tips you'd want me to talk about, ask that away too. I'd love to explain it. I'd love to talk about it. I just topped a case event with this today, and I'd love to just keep playing it and keep trying it out. All right. Thank you guys so much for letting me share this with you guys. Have a wonderful day.